Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ineos Graduate Recruitment webinar for 2022 Recruitment. My name's Tom Crotty. I'm the Director of Ineos responsible for Corporate Affairs and Communications. So I'm going to act as the MC for the first half. So just to give you a layout, we've got the first half of this session where I'm going to be talking to a few Ineos people to give you a feel for the company. And then Annie is going to take over in the second half, Annie Collins, and she'll talk to you much more about the graduate recruitment process itself, what you need to do, how that's going to work. So that's the plan. So let me just start with a couple of minutes about Ineos itself. You've seen quite a lot of it from that very sharp, short film, if you were paying attention, but it flashes by pretty quickly. But we're a very large global company. We turn over just over $60 billion. We have 26,000 employees across the world in 35 different businesses, 183 manufacturing sites in 26 countries. The numbers are fine, but the numbers, I don't think, really tell the story of what Ineos really is. First of all, in terms of what we do, I like to sort of say to people that our products, you're probably in touch with them from the minute you get up in the morning to the minute you go to bed at night. Yeah, we are making so many building block products that go into so many materials and products that you use every day, whether that's the chlorine that's purifying your water, solvents that we're using in the pharmaceutical industry for the production of insulin and antibiotics and vaccines. Our advanced polymers are going into automotive and going into aerospace. They're lightweighting planes, they're reducing the weight of cars, aiding to significant improvements in fuel consumption and reduction of emissions. A lot of our products are driven towards the sustainability agenda, and we've made some very public commitments as a company on sustainability. We've committed to being at net zero by 2050. We're producing detailed roadmaps for 2030 that will define how we're going to get to that net zero picture by 2050. And we are a fundamental part, we believe, of the solution. And I think for someone looking to come into an industry that is going to make a huge difference over the next 20, 30 years, I don't think you can go far wrong in this industry and with this company. We very recently made a massive commitment to hydrogen and developing the hydrogen economy, $2 billion to produce lots of green hydrogen over the next 10 years, and a lot of work going into things like advanced recycling systems, which I'm sure will come a bit more when we talk to Liz. So a lot of stuff about what we do, but the most important thing, I think, is the people and the attitude of the company. I've been fortunate enough to work in Ineos for over 20 years, and it is a unique environment. It is not your classic corporate environment. We have a little sort of summary of what we like in terms of behavior, and the three words that we use a lot that I think summarize Ineos quite well are grit, rigor, and humor. We have a great determination to get things done. We have very thorough systems to ensure we do them properly, and we try and do it all in a way that people can enjoy relax and have some fun. And if you look at what we've got, we're pretty unique in terms of the way we go about it. And we're going to be talking to Claire a bit later on from one of our key sports teams, because sport plays an important part actually in our company now in terms of helping us develop our approach to work and our approach to business, and also giving us some time to relax and enjoy ourselves. So I think the whole people issue in Ineos is pretty unique, and I hope you'd find that over the next sort of hour or so as you listen to this. So that's my sort of brief introduction, and I'm going to, as I said, be talking to three people fairly shortly. So I'm going to start with George Ratcliffe. Going to move on and talk to Claire Simpson from Mercedes Formula One, and then I'm going to talk to Liz Redweger from who's managing one of our big businesses. So that's what I've got for you the next sort of 20 minutes or so. But let me start by asking George a question to get us going. So George, find my place here. George, you're compared to me, you are relatively young. So why don't you start by telling us what you personally experienced from our commercial graduate program?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for that introduction. I've been in Ineos for about 10 years now. I came straight out of university, went through the commercial graduate program. I've been largely UK based, in fact, solely UK based actually, with a lot of travel. As you mentioned, those 183 sites we have globally means that wherever you're based, there's going to be an element of part of your business likely in another country. I started first 3 or 4 years in Grangemouth, our big refinery and petrochemical site in Scotland. From then I moved down to our trading team, very linked to my first business from the raw material and feedstock basis, and joined our trading team for the next 2 or 3 years down in London, in our headquarter office in London. From then I spent a bit more time in Scotland, in Aberdeen, when Ineos bought one of the large BP businesses that brings 40% of the UK's oil and gas into the UK. And I was very much part of that integration process of how to Ineosify a business. And this was all within my first 4, 5, 6 years in Ineos, before moving back down to London, where I did a few various roles, notably managing a business called a PVC compounding business in the northeast of England, and now running our Ineos Hygienics program. So that was my first sort of 10 years or so, which is where I am now. I think, a few kind of comments on I think how that's been for me, and especially as coming through 4 years, 5 years of the commercial graduate program. I don't think I was ever sat around with nothing to do once. I think there's never a moment when I think that grads on the Ineos scheme aren't being pushed or tested. And I think it's really important to say that in a positive way, because when you're fresh out of university, you're as energized and keen to learn and take on new roles and new jobs. And I think you're never going to be short of that in Ineos. And I think one thing we find the most within Ineos is people asking for more and wanting to do more, and we'll always oblige and give that to them. So that there is a real part where you won't be short of things to do, which is quite important to keep you engaged. And then I think with that, one of the really good interactions you get on the commercial program is the interaction with the senior management. It's quite a flat structure. You'll probably hear a bit more on that throughout the next hour, but it's quite important to say that we're so close to the senior managers within Ineos, and as a young graduate, you're talking to them on day one. You get introduced to them, you have mentors, and it's quite a rare place to be such a young person in a business talking to the senior team who are running and setting the direction of the wider business. So exposure-wise, it's hard to compare, I think, a graduate program in that sense with what you get in Ineos, but a lot's required from you as well.
And you mentioned, George, on the way through that your current role in running Ineos Hygienics. A little plug for you there. We are. It's one of George's key products. Tell us a bit about the challenges you had in setting up a new consumer brand for Ineos.
In a nutshell, for anyone who hasn't heard of Ineos Hygienics, it's the first consumer-facing business taking the Ineos name that we've taken as a wider business and shown to the public. It's a sanitizer-based business that we started a year and a half ago at the start of the pandemic. Ineos make 100% of Europe's hospital-grade alcohol, which is what's used in hand sanitizer. But we had a challenge of setting up a sanitizer business, consumer-facing, which we've never done before, and a challenge to do that within 10 days because the pandemic was ongoing and we wanted to step in and help out where we donated a lot to hospitals, but we needed to do it there and then, not in a year's time. In order to do that, I was put in charge of pulling all of the bits and all of the strengths of Ineos together to try and create this business in such a fast way. And I mean, the simple way, without too much time, so I could talk all day on this, of how we're able to do it was we could pull in all the different arms and the strengths of Ineos. So it was quite a fascinating first year, and especially this first 10 days. We used, for example, our Ineos Grenadiers cycling team, who are a team of about 100 people, 30 riders, 70 wider team, and they are a sports team where all sports are banned. So 100 really proactive, good people at logistics. We engaged all of them to physically transport all of our bottles around to give to the hospitals in the early days. We used our Mercedes Formula One team, who ended up giving us all of the white vans to drive all of the products around, because we think we have a logistics trouble and shortage at the moment, similar in the pandemic. We, as I said, we have a big solvents business, which makes nameplate biggest capacity ethanol globally. So a lot of regulation was needed to understand how to deal with, sell and transport ethanol. So we've got the expertise in the business, so we brought them into Hygienics. The Ineos Grenadier team, who designed our car, also designs that nice label Tom showed you, because after all, it's an Ineos business with our name that we're showing to the public, which we've never done before. So there's a lot of ownership, and we need to make sure that the message I'm talking about through my business speaks on behalf and properly of the company. And another aspect of Ineos, O&P, who you'll hear from later, Liz Rickweger, is running a part of that business. But one of the issues was sourcing bottles and caps and pumps when countries' borders were shut down, and with limited supply, how do us as a new startup get access to those? But Ineos is such a wide company, and there's so many links to other global businesses that we already had a lot of the relationships with some of these key suppliers that allowed us to get the products we needed within this amazing short space of 10 days when lots of other people were unable to. So the breadth and strength of Ineos, I think, really came through in this Ineos Hygienics first 10 days, and then a year and a half, we're still using all those contacts.
And just looking back briefly over the last year or so, what were the big challenges that you've had to overcome?
I mean, a couple of those where those different Ineos businesses and teams helped out. I mean, it was an engineer's dream, for example, to say to our team, we need to build 6 factories in 10 days to build hand sanitizer across various countries, which we achieved in the end, never having bottled or we didn't have know-how how to do that. But our engineers, who the commercial grads and the commercial team worked really closely with, they were given that task and they went off and did that. We've got a lot of good chemists, so making the formulas fairly simple, but bolting all the bits of the kit and sourcing it was a big challenge. But I think something I know our operations and engineering team really rose to. Logistics was hugely difficult, still is for other reasons. Moving product around when borders are closed or there's a driver shortage or there's a pandemic going on was a big issue, but we're able to leverage some of our other Ineos supply and logistics contracts. One of the interesting challenges, and again, it feels like this is a session in itself, is creating a brand. You know, Ineos Hygienics is a sanitizer-based brand, but we're competing with brands that have been around for 100+ years, Purell and Carex, for example, the brands you're used to going into a shop. So how do you create a brand? It's not Ineos's forte, the branded side. We've got Belstaff, which is a fashion-based brand, who offered a lot of support to us there, but learning how to create and promote a brand has been one of the big challenges that we're still ongoing with. But a year in, Ineos is now a much more widely known name than it was a year ago, but still a lot of room for growth. So, but a lot of challenges that we somewhere had an expertise within the Ineos business that we started there for help and then we learned.
Great. George, thank you very much. That's good insight into how we start up a new business. And one of the things that you mentioned there was, use and liaison with the sports teams, and also the fact that Ineos is a name that's a bit better known. And one of the reasons I think it's probably better known is due to the activity of the Mercedes Formula One team, that we're now part of, and that's the segue into Claire. Claire Simpson, who is the aeronautical team leader at Mercedes Formula One. Claire, why don't we start off by telling us a bit more about your role and also how you got there, in terms of what did you study, how did you end up doing the job you're doing today?
Okay. Hi everyone. So my role is I'm an aerodynamics team leader in the aerodynamics department. So I work with a group of around 10 aerodynamicists of sort of varying experience levels, and we work to develop the kind of mid region of the car. So on the current Formula One car this year, that's the sort of barge board, side pod, floor leading edge area. So we use a mixture of wind tunnel. We've got a brilliant wind tunnel here in Brackley, which we use, and also CFD, so computational fluid dynamics, to try and sort of predict the flow field around the car, to try and sort of optimize the flow structures and the aerodynamics of our area. It's a mixture of the role really. It's sort of partly technical in terms of just trying to kind of lead the direction of the group and the aerodynamic direction we want to take, but also quite a big emphasis of the role is on the development of our aerodynamicists and our graduate aerodynamicists. So we've got quite a few graduates in the team at the moment, so we have quite a big focus on that as well, about helping them to reach their potential. So my background to it, so I did engineering at university and then specialised in aeronautical engineering in the last few years. And from then I went on to do a PhD in Formula One aerodynamics, and then went to work at Lotus F1 team, so now Alpine, for a few years as a junior aerodynamicist, and then was lucky enough to come to Mercedes in 2014, just at the start of the sort of hybrid era. So fortunate timing coming when I did. And then I've sort of just been able to kind of really find my own path here really, and kind of be promoted to be team leader. So that's kind of brief outline.
Great timing, and you can claim complete ownership of that number 7 behind you.
Yeah, it's not just coincidence.
And in terms of Ineos, Claire, I don't know how much interaction you have, but what would you see as the synergies between Ineos and the Mercedes Formula One team?
Yes, I'm just starting to kind of be a bit more exposed to some of the projects we're working with you on, which is really, really interesting. I guess one thing is there's a real focus here on efficiency, which I know is important for you as well. So recently, there's been a kind of cost cap imposed on F1, and that sort of was accelerated. The amount of the cost cap got reduced after the COVID pandemic as well. So efficiency for us is a really big focus at the moment in terms of how can we still kind of get the same for less. So that as a company is in terms of aerodynamics as well. We have limits on the amount we can do. So we've got only a certain amount of wind tunnel runs that we can do in a given week, and also a limited amount of CFD runs we can do as well. So the efficiency with which we use that resource is really important for us. And then the other thing is reliability, which I know is important for you too. There's a real kind of crossover, I think, that with the Formula One team, and I think early on, sort of in this hybrid era, we had a real focus on the reliability, and really realizing how that is another thing that was really going to set us apart. Not just the outright performance of the car, but the reliability of the car was a really important, I think, has been, and I think it's part of that focus actually has been a real key to the success really of the last few years too.
And I think the other thing as well might be worth mentioning is, one of the things we're looking at in sports is there synergy across our sports teams, and one of the most high profile synergies that we're trying to exploit at the moment is involving Mercedes Formula One folk in the America's Cup program as we look to design a new boat for the next America's Cup. And I think that's really exciting, because a lot of the stuff that you guys are familiar with, I think, as Toto put it when we talked a few weeks ago, we need to do with water what you guys do with air.
I think I think so. I think it's really going to be interesting, I think, to take our kind of F1 methodology and the way in which we've developed the aerodynamics of the Formula One car and apply that to something different. I think is going to be really interesting thing to see, to watch that, how that develops, but also as well, like what we can take back the other way as well.
Yeah.
I think is going to be it's going to be a really interesting few years, I think.
Brilliant. Great. Claire, thank you very much for that.
No
We're going
worries.
to move on to our third guest at this point, which is Liz Rettwager. And
Hi,
Liz, hey Liz, one of our business directors in our olefins and polymers business. So Liz, do you want to sort of start by telling us what your responsibilities are as a business director in Ineos?
Yeah, so I'm responsible for the business as a whole, from the profit and loss that we have within our respective product ranges, through the sales team, through the technical service and development, the customer service, and more importantly, in the recent years, ever more, our circular economy program, and developing our business and changing our business to react to the world around us and the emerging changes in the environmental landscape.
Just sort of building on that, and you know, we always want to ask ourselves the difficult questions. And an obvious question for someone young looking at this: why on earth would I want to come and work for a company that makes plastics?
Yeah, and it's a question I get asked a lot. Why on earth do you want to be in there? And for me, it's about being part of the solution. You touched at the beginning on the fact that you're never very far away from an Ineos product. And there are a lot of very good things that plastics do on a day-to-day basis that we need to remember whilst addressing the challenges that plastics also have. So, for example, our largest polymer plant makes heavy-duty polymers that go into transporting water safely to the consumer. It goes into pipes that go underground for 100 years and are guaranteed in use. We also transport green energy from the production of green energy, which is probably in the North Sea, via wind farms, and we transport that through high voltage cable ducting to the consumer. So it's another use of our products. As you said before, we're in lightweighting, we're in medical packaging. There's a million good uses for plastics that we need to remember. But the challenge comes really around plastic waste and also, to a certain extent, plastic packaging. Packaging has been developed over many years and it plays a function. That function is usually to protect goods in transit and to reduce emissions in transit by doing it in a more lightweight way than glass or metals. What's happened over many, many years is plastics have been designed in such a way as to make them lighter and more functional. And sometimes this has made them unrecyclable. So what we as an industry are now working really hard to do, and we're working with the plastics converters and people who package foods and so on, is to maintain all the good properties of plastics and combine them in such a way that they retain the intrinsic recyclability that they have. When you make the products we make, they are recyclable. As we combine them to provide a function, or as our customers combine them to provide a function, we've ended up with very good solutions for protecting materials, but we have a recycling challenge. So as Ineos, we believe that by using our polymer technology to address this and help our consumers retain all the functionality of polymers, but in a way that is recyclable, we're helping to drive to a greener future. The aim by 2050, as you've said, is we've stated that we want to be carbon neutral. We also want to be selling into applications that are fully recyclable and are recycled. Now, at the moment, things that are recycled are not always reused. So the polymer that you make after recycling can suffer some degradation. So we're also working to upgrade those polymers to make sure that recycled polymers have a value-added use rather than the more sort of traffic cone uses that they may have had in the past, and plant pot kind of uses. Lastly, there will still be some polymers that become difficult to recycle. And you touched on these before, and this is where we believe that developing an advanced recycling program is the key to future success. So taking those polymers back to the building blocks to make new plastics that can be used safely in contact with foods, to be 100% sure that they are still as pure as the original polymers. I touched on being part of the solution. I don't see modern life changing. I don't see the consumer wanting to give away the convenience that we've all got used to. But I do see that there are applications for plastics that will go away. There are applications today where polymers are not needed. They play a decorative role, not a functional role. And I think with time, society will just deselect those things. They will just not buy things with that kind of packaging. But I don't see the consumer wanting food that doesn't stay fresh in their fridges, or cars that are less fuel efficient because they are heavier. So we have to retain all the good bits of plastics while using our polymer science knowledge to resolve the end of life issues, the reuse issues, the recycle issues. And we're making great strides at Ineos in doing that. We've made some really powerful pledges that we would have that are on our website that we will achieve by 2025 was our plan. We will achieve the olefins and polymers goals by 2023 at the latest. So we will then issue some new pledges because we didn't see them as an empty sort of, this is what we want to do by 2025. This was the first step on the road to a recyclable future.
Great. And just turning to the issues for graduates, Liz, what sort of roles in your business do graduates fulfill?
We have had graduates working on our circular economy program. So we had, when we first started attributing, which is where you use a mass balance concept to say there is a certain amount of recycled or renewable content in a product, we used our graduates to get that program started with a company, with an organization called RSB, which is the Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterials. And they provide us with an audit traceable route, and our graduates were very involved in getting that started. I also have a graduate CO2 expert in my team who is working with all of our plants on those roadmaps that you mentioned for how we will reduce our carbon footprint by 2030. I have 2 graduates in sales in my team who are out on a day-to-day basis discussing with the customer new solutions and how we can help them with their circular economy transformation. So we have a wide variety of roles in my business. I've got technical development roles in our R&D centre in Belgium. And we also have production graduates in our plants across Europe. So improving our processes and working with us to bring a new viewpoint to how we do things.
Great. And I know you're involved in graduate recruitment yourself. What do you look for in a graduate?
I look for graduates who can roll up their sleeves. The Ineos job description is, we have a very clear idea of what we want a graduate to do when they come in on day one. You mentioned that we're fast moving, we're dynamic, and we like to have a lot of fun. We also, as George mentioned, are quite delayered. So we pull our graduates into quite a lot of our projects and give them exposure quite often up to CEO level. I therefore am looking for people who are not going to say, well, that wasn't in my original job description. I'm looking for people who can say, I don't know how to do it, but I'll go and find out. And we really celebrate the people who can do that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Liz. That's great. We've had various questions coming in, which a lot of them are being answered on the chat by Annie, because they're questions about the recruitment process, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go through. But one question that I'll answer, because it was a question on automotive, I think that Matthew asked, which was why are we developing a hydrogen fuel cell version of the Grenadier, not a direct hydrogen combustion version of the Grenadier? It's a really good question. The issue with when you look at hydrogen propulsion, small cars will tend to be hydrogen fuel cells. So electric cars with their own power station, if you like, which is what a hydrogen fuel cell is. So producing electricity, which then powers the car. Large vehicles like buses, trucks, etc., are fueling direct on hydrogen. So they're using liquid hydrogen the same way as they would have used diesel. They burn it, but the emission out the tailpipe is simply water, no CO2. The Grenadier sort of sits right in the middle of that. You know, it's a vehicle that's bigger than a regular car, but a lot smaller than, say, a truck. And we're on the cusp. So what we're doing is we're developing a fuel cell version to see if that works. But if not, then we would move on to direct hydrogen combustion. So we're it's not a firm decided position, but let's see how that develops. Let me just ask a couple more questions. George, let me ask you one. The graduates are watching now. If you could give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think a lot of people who've just spoken have touched on some really good points. I think you actually said something that probably resonates to me now. If I could go to my 10-year ago self, what would I say? I think it's very much a people piece. I would say consider the people you're planning on working with. I think when you hand in your application in the businesses you go for, I think consider the company and the values of that company. I think you all come from, everyone we're talking to today, coming from top universities, which is brilliant. So you're used to being top of the chain. I think day one, any role you step into, you're going to be at the bottom end of that chain, because there'll be lots of experienced people in that room who will know more than you will about that subject. And those are the people you want to learn from. So I think having people that you are going to learn from is really important. And I think I would just urge you not to pick a business where you get lost in the numbers, where you're a graduate recruited for a graduate's sake, which does exist. So I think be aware of that. And likewise, you don't want to go somewhere where you're on your own. I think having people around you who are eager for you to learn, and an opportunity and a base where you can learn with the right values, is so important. And I can absolutely say from my side that the people you'll work around with in Ineos are really considerate and want to sit next to someone they're working with, a new graduate, for example, that they enjoy working with, they want to teach, and they want to see them in 10 years' time in bigger roles. So it's a great place to work. And I think one thing, people and company culture, so important when you're picking your business that you're going to apply for.
Thanks, George. And I guess to follow on that, Liz, let me just ask you a final question. And it sort of follows on from what George has just said. What do you think distinguishes us from other big businesses and corporates? I mean, like me, you've worked in other corporates. Mm-hmm. What do you think distinguishes Ineos?
I have a lot more fun. You touched on it when you said, you know, the fun aspect. We do laugh a lot. Humor is one of our values. Where are we different? We don't tend to have the big corporate functions. So we have no hesitation in using things like the best quality law firm when we want to do something, but we don't have the great big legal structure in terms of legal departments or communication departments. That makes us, to a certain extent, I think, faster and more agile, and it means we have a very Ineos flavour on things that we do. Where else would I say that we're different? If I think back to my time on a graduate programme in another major petrochemical company, I think I was 20 years before it was probably 18 years before I met the CEO. Our graduates will meet the CEO probably within the first 6 months of whichever business it is that they work in. They will have the opportunity to interact with them. They will be working on something meaningful that will be of interest to the CEO and will be, therefore, something that they will be interested to be presented on. So I think it's a much flatter organization than most companies. We don't have that big sort of functional structure around us. We're very agile and we do have a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you, Liz. I'm going to wrap up this section of the day. So big thank you, George and Claire and Liz, for giving your time and your insights to us today. I hope you, those on the call, have enjoyed hearing a bit more about Ineos, understanding a bit more about what we do. And most importantly, I think the type of people you're going to be working alongside, because that, for me, is the acid test of whether you're going to have fun, as Liz has said. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Annie. She's going to take over from me and explain the more detailed part about the graduate program and the systems. And also, you'll get a chance to talk to some of our recent graduates towards the end of that session and get some practical tips on applying for Ineos. Before we do that, we're going to show you another short film. It's a cut down version of a film that we made about a trip that we do on a regular basis for our graduates to Namibia, which I think is probably fairly unusual. So we thought you might like to see a bit. So that's what's coming next. Thanks for your time so far.
Part of the Ineos philosophy is to encourage people to take on more. One should, if one can, try and maximise the number of days that are unforgettable.
Many large companies provide programs for graduates in terms of providing training and experiences and teamwork bonding. Ineos is different in terms that's not going to be done in the New Forest or in the Cotswolds or in the Lake District. It's going to be in Africa.
Of course, Namibia is a fantastic place for adventures.
The scenery is stunning, but it really needs good grit and determination. Simply participating in these conditions, it's a really good place then to work together and to get through the challenges.
We wanted to make it a proper challenge, but something which people would feel at the end of the trip they'd really accomplished something personally. Running and biking are things that anybody can have a go at, and that's sort of accessible to anybody.
For any graduate coming here, I'm sure will have a fulfilling time. To then feel the emotion and the satisfaction of an achievement at the end of it, I mean, that's what it's all about.
It's remarkable how much people can do and how much they can accomplish, and people, they've sort of got these brakes on in the head, but when you take the brakes off, it's remarkable what you can achieve.
Thank you very, very much, Tom and the panel. Good afternoon, this is Annie Collins talking now, and I have a variety of graduates, thank you, that you can see on the screen now who are going to be talking to you shortly. Just before I hand over to them, I just wanted to have a quick chat with you about the graduate programs and what we offer. I think a lot of what I was going to say has been said already by the panelists. I hope you've got a very good flavour of Ineos from what you've heard, and I'm happy to take any questions as we go along as well. But to give you a bit more information on graduate programs, so typically our graduate programs are sort of 4 to sort of 5 years in length, which is actually long for compared to most companies. So why do we do it like that? That's because we really do put graduates in real jobs from day one. Now, having been to a lot of career fairs, I see that strap line all over the place, and I think, do they really? And that's up to you, I think, to go and find out and talk to other companies. But I think I can honestly say in Ineos that really is the case. I think you've heard that already, and I think the grads who will be talking shortly will verify that. So we want in Ineos to give you breadth and depth, and we put you in real jobs, real accountability from the start. Just as George said, exposure to senior managers. Just as Liz said, the board of the business you join will know that you have joined as a graduate. That's highly unusual for a company of our size. Just to get a bit more specific then, and I know we've already had some questions on this. So if we talk about engineering, if you wanted to join us in an engineering role, if we take the UK as an example, we recruit graduates into our site in Runcorn near Manchester and up in Grangemouth near Edinburgh. If you join in those places, you will get chartership. That's a UK qualification. So we will work with you for you to obtain your chartership. We also recruit graduates across Europe and in the US. So typically you would join in the country of nationality, you would join a site there and move around. Most of our sites are large sites with a number of different assets, perhaps a number of different businesses on the sites, and you would move around to gain experience on those sites. I also want to talk specifically about one programme which is open at the minute, which you can apply to now, which is what we call our European Commercial Programme. And this is where we look for people typically with a technical background. At minimum, you need to be numerate. But this is for people who don't want to sort of fiddle around on plants and do the real techie engineering stuff or R&D in the lab. This is for people who are keen to get stuck straight into the business side. So this programme is a fixed duration. It's 5 years. During that period, you'd have 3 different roles. We'd move you around Europe. So at least one of those roles would be outside your home country. And the idea of this is to give breadth and depth. So we look for 3 very different roles in different Ineos businesses and in different locations. And this programme is really to try and develop our leaders of the future. Whilst you're on the programme, again, you've heard some of this already, you'll be assigned a mentor. That mentor could be a local manager on the site, or it could even be a manager who's not on that site in another business. They're going to be relatively senior people. The idea of this is someone who can act as a sort of sounding board and coach you through your sort of career as it develops within Ineos. You'll also be eligible to attend 2 corporate events. So we have 2 events, year 1 and year 3 events. So aptly named. So year 1, when you've been in the company 1 year, year 3, obviously the same. The year 1 events, we hold 1 for European grads in Cologne, and we hold 1 for our US graduates in Houston. So these are held every year in September. And this is an opportunity for the graduates to get together, to get to know each other, to network with each other, and very importantly, to network with senior managers. And senior managers will give various presentations on a variety of different aspects about Ineos. So it's an opportunity to learn and get an understanding of the bigger Ineos. As Tom has said, there's 26,000 of us worldwide. We're a big company, so it gives you a better flavour of us and what we do. It's also an opportunity to learn some skills. So year 1, we have finance for sort of non-finance graduates. We also use a variety of other tools to improve your skills at these sessions. In the year 3, this is a 4-day event held in London. All the graduates from around the globe attend that event. Similar format, we have a whole day on corporate wellness as an example. We've touched on that already, and you'll hear more about that coming up. So these are fantastic events that you will be eligible for as part of our graduate programme. Lots of on-the-job training, as you've heard, soft skills training as well. All of these things are available to you on the programme. So hopefully that's given you a quick run through. There's a lot of information on our website in the graduate section, so please go and look there. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over now to a couple of our graduates who can talk to you about their experiences. So we're going to hear from Monica firstly, who's on our commercial graduate programme, and then from Julian, who is an engineer based on our Cologne site. So over to you, Monica.
Thank you very much, Annie. Hi, everyone. My name is Monica. I am a 4th year commercial graduate on the European programme. I'd like to take you through 4 pictures today that will show you my journey through Ineos so far. And yeah, please pop any questions for us at the end if you have any. So first of all, who am I and why Ineos? I'm a chemist by background. I spent 4 years at the University of Bath doing an undergraduate master's in chemistry, and I followed this with a further 4 years at UCL doing a PhD. Why Ineos then? So I quickly found during my PhD that I was more interested in the commercial aspects of research, looking into research and thinking, can I commercialize this? What would be a business plan? I also found research a bit lonely, so I really wanted to work in a wider team with like-minded individuals. And that brought me on to Ineos, really, as a global chemicals company. I could keep the chemical background, but explore my commercial interests and awareness, as well as working with brilliant people, as everyone's already alluded to. And so, yeah, the next slide will help me tell you where my journey began, and that was in Frankfurt. So I spent just under 3 years in Frankfurt, doing 2 different roles. Firstly, procurement, and secondly, in business management. So I was a commercial product manager of 2 of our specialty products in a business called Ineos Styrolution, and they make styrenics that go into various applications, including Lego building blocks, to coffee machines, and also medical applications such as sort of drip trays. Now, Annie alluded to this earlier. I think one of the great things about the Ineos program is, you don't just go to a country for a couple of months just to tick a box. You really get to spend a decent chunk of time abroad in Europe. And that's where you really understand the culture of a different country. You get to learn the language, and you get to have sort of lasting memories that I'm not sure many other programs offer out there. I know I certainly won't forget my time in Frankfurt for those 3 years. And so, yeah, third photo is what I'm doing now. Unfortunately, I'm not artistic enough to be Lewis Hamilton's photographer, but I do work for Ineos's newest business venture, the one George was speaking to earlier, which is Ineos Hygienics. And I am based in London. I'm the commercial product manager and commercialization manager of that little box that you see on the wheel of the car, which is one of our Ineos sanitizer dispensers. So George spoke to this earlier. I mean, in true Ineos style, we set up a business effectively in 10 days, building sort of 6 factories around the world, to initially deliver sanitizer for free to the NHS and other healthcare services. But fast forward a year, and being the entrepreneurs that we are, we now have taken this product that we offered to hospitals and have made it available to the public. So yeah, really trying to help people sort of get back to day-to-day life with a bit more confidence, and challenge some of the bigger brands out there, like your Carexes of the world. And yeah, you'll now find us in most retail outlets in the UK, for example, Boots, Sainsbury's, Waitrose. But not only this, Ineos saw a gap in the market for a bit of a game-changing product, and that was in the dispenser. And it has been my job for the last year and a bit to help bring that product to market. And what has that meant? I mean, it's been a bit of everything, in all honesty. So sales pitches to retailers and big corporates, price positioning and market strategy, branding and marketing, PR, things that I never in my life thought I would do in a chemicals company. But amazing learning curve, and yeah, also just sort of day-to-day business monitoring. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but very exciting. And I'm happy to say the dispenser business is going from strength to strength. A couple of highlights for me have been being featured in GQ magazine, as well as seeing our dispensers in some of the most iconic places and locations in the UK. And I mean, working for effectively a startup within a larger corporation has been an amazing experience. But I think the key take home here is how unique it is that a company like Ineos puts that much trust into their graduates, and gives you the opportunity to be in a role that really matters when it matters, and trusts you to get the job done. Yeah, and so far so good, I would say. Last image is, yeah, the video we just saw. The Namibian desert awaits me in May. I'm, yeah, excited, but also quite nervous. But, you know, it's a 9-month preparation in the lead up to this event, and there's so much support, goodwill, and encouragement from your peers that actually has already brought us closer together. I mean, there's nothing like discussing blisters over coffee to really get you closer to your graduate cohort. And on that note, I will hand over to a fellow grad, Julian, who is on the engineering program over in Cologne, who I believe has already conquered the Namibian desert. Over to you, Julian.
Yes, thanks, Monica, for handing over, and good afternoon from my side as well to everyone. So yeah, I'm Julian. I'm working as supply chain planning and crack optimization manager here at our Cologne site. I've studied chemical engineering and started as a modeling engineer in a larger working group a while ago, where nowadays I'm leading a group of 6 planners and 3 engineers within the larger business that you heard earlier from Liz about. So quite interesting stuff. Together with my team, we're managing the distribution of the products on our side in the site network, and furthermore, we're planning the smooth supply of roughly 4 million tons of feedstock per year towards our cracker. So big numbers that we are involved in. I would also like to show you 4 slides to give you a bit an overview of what I've done so far, and more important for sure, to give you also a bit more impression of what you could do as an engineer at a chemical site, or in other words, on the more technical graduate program. So on the first slide that is already up there, you can see some pieces and details from a research project. Will not go into the details here, no worries. It was more around a resource efficiency program for our plants. Was one of the first projects that I was involved in after I finished my dual studies. That was roughly 7 years ago now already. And right on the beginning, I got responsibility, not for the whole project, but for at least a project work stream here. And together with a lot of people, externals, partners, universities, and people on site, we delivered an online analysis system for our cracker feed streams here. It was calibrated and I labbed this conditions, which is pretty normal, I would say, but eventually was very unique and interesting to see how we managed then to get it really into the field application and get it up and running. So that was really interesting and a great experience to manage all that around with a lot of moving parts, with a lot of communication, stakeholders, people in the management here on site, like our board members that we got in touch with and had to defend our ideas and got them approved. So definitely something I would say that is very unique as a young graduate. In the case of questions, for sure, our line manager, our mentors were there to support that one. So that was the first piece where I, let's say, stayed on the technical side of a job here. And then on my next slide, it's more my move over to a bit more commercial role. So you see 2 parts of a very major project here on our side. That is firstly the new jetty on the River Rhine that enables us to bring additional feedstocks into the site for our assets. And secondly, the new build barge called Onion. It's 1 out of 4 brand new gas barges that are built on purpose to supply raw material. This is a unique and efficient class of river barges. Each of them carries roughly 3 times the load of a traditional barge. So just to give you a bit of impression. So you can see after my initial first role as real technical engineer, I gathered a bit more responsibility and now moved into a more commercial role. So my current position is in supply chain department, and that's more managing the interface between our commercial sales team and feedstock procurement teams and on our operation management here on the Cologne side. So really interesting to see a bit more the move out of the technical that I learned studies, and now very interesting to see how it moves into commercial role, and have never think about it during studies, but definitely a lot of other questions that I'm getting involved in now that I've never thought about during university, and especially a lot of many different people to work with. And to also go a bit to the fun part, I think Liz highlighted that on the panel discussion earlier a bit. Together with all these involved people, we will celebrate and have a naming and christening ceremony of all these new 4 barges that is actually by chance tomorrow evening in Duisburg, where, let's say, from the most senior person of our business up to all the people involved there will take place. Yeah, then on the next slide, third slide from my side, a bit wider overview or a nice aerial view on our Cologne side. You see it's roughly 400 times the size of a football field. So over 2,000 employees, 25 plants, a lot of infrastructure, just to throw a bit of numbers at you. So pretty huge, to summarize it. It means a different variety of jobs that can be offered. So from the real technical expert, the plant operations engineer, or process energy optimization as I started in, or modeling, calculation outputs, or a lot of projects out of a lot of, or a whole bunch of projects that need to be worked in. So there's a lot of major projects within Ineos, and at our side, I think if you follow, there's a lot of announcement, new plans, big revamps, many projects to keep our plant well maintained. So a lot to do. In summary, I would say it is amazing to work with Ineos, especially as a graduate. I will not repeat a lot of stuff that we heard already. So if you're motivated, you will get a lot of responsible. You will learn a lot. And I can definitely confirm that it's a flat organization. And I think that is one of the very, very unique parts in our industry, that you really get involved with all the board members from right the beginning. Yeah, and finally, we touched the topic 2 times now already. It's a Namibia experience to say you that it's definitely worth to do this experience. I think you got a good impression on the video how it looks like. I think it's a real proper challenge. I can at least say that I felt similar to Monica, a bit afraid in the beginning when I took on the challenge and signed up for it. Never done much more than a 10-kilometer run, I would say, but yeah, definitely was worth doing it. It's not just the week in Namibia, but also the whole voyage over a year that it's going to get there. I mean, you can think running and biking, it's more an individual sport, but it's really a strong team achievement. I mean, it's a great support team on the voyage with physiotherapist support, with medical support, and also in Namibia. And it definitely helps if you see all the team people preparing, pushing them each other. So definitely a team thing. And as more dedication you put in, that's definitely one of the learning. And as more effort you put in the preparation, you get out of the journey that you have in Namibia. As fit as you are, you can enjoy that. Was it tough? It definitely was. Was it a long and exhausting way to get there? It was. However, it was worth every kilometer, I can tell you. And it proves how much everyone can accomplish with the right determination and effort. I think that is the key learning. And you see the smaller upper picture with the sky. I will always remember sleeping on top of the Brandberg Mountain, which is a 2,600 meter elevation, which I would say is the clearest and brightest night sky that I have ever seen. So a once in a life experience. So there are much more stars out there than you may have ever seen. Yeah, I hope you got a bit further detailed impression on the technical graduate scheme within Ineos and with the graduates program. I thank you for your attention and would hand over to you, Annie.
Thank you very much, Monica and Julian. If you can just hang around. I see Monica. I'm not sure if you're. We'll bring you back in a minute, Monica. But Julian, there's a question for you from Nathan. So he's asking, what influenced you to move into a commercial role And were there any advantages or disadvantages of coming from the technical side in the first place?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I would say what motivated me was, let's say, I studied a technical role, or let me start differently. I studied a technical topic. I wanted to stay on it, and I felt very comfortable to do it in the beginning. But over a while, you see it's a lot of influences coming into the technical world. So you see how much you can move on the business side, that you really get involved into decision processes, that it's a complete different field of questions to be answered. I have to admit I hesitated a bit in the beginning before I would say I left my background in the technical part, but yeah, so far, I mean, it's already some years ago now, and I can say it was definitely not the wrong decision for me so far.
Perfect. Thank you, Julian. And just perhaps to add to that, I think, you know, we employ a lot of engineers, both on the commercial side and, you know, directly into engineering. And I think something we don't do in Ineos, which I think other companies perhaps are more inclined to do, is pigeonhole people. So I think just, you know, if you join as an engineer like Julian did, and others have done, that doesn't mean you only stay on the engineering side. There is the ability and the option to move over into commercial, and sometimes it does work the other way, not quite so often, but we have had people who have gone back and forth as well. So we don't pigeonhole people. It's about your abilities and what you're interested in, and we try and suit both of those. Thanks, Julian. Monica, question for you. Why were you motivated to join the graduate programme, and what were your thoughts at the time of applying? If you can remember that far back. Wasn't that far?
It's a good question. So what motivated me was I was interested by commercial, but I didn't know exactly what. So was that sales, marketing, supply chain? Didn't really have a clue. And the benefit of the Ineos programme is you get to experience a lot of these, but not only for 2 months, because I think in a 2-month period, for me, it would be quite hard to gauge whether that was of real interest. So the fact that you get a 1 or 2 year long project role or role was appealing to me. At the time of applying, what were my thoughts? Well, I think at the time of applying, it was an interesting period for the whole climate change, plastics debate, chemicals company. And I think Liz alluded to a lot of the reasons why I was not put off, because of the fact that, you know, being part of a solution. And I think until you get to speak to people in that industry, you may not know that. And yeah, going through the whole recruitment process and understanding more about Ineos really cemented to me that it was the right decision.
Thanks, Monica. Excellent. Okay, so thank you very much, both of you. We're going to hear from Tiga in just a minute. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the sort of practical side of applying, and then we can take any more questions that we have at the end. So as if you've sort of researched a bit about Ineos, you'll have spotted we have what we call a very sort of federal structure. We have a lot of individual businesses. They all do their own thing. They all do things their own way. It's one of the strengths of Ineos. It's why we can be lean and mean, and we don't have this heavy corporate structure overlaid that we feel is unnecessary and slows things up. So that does mean in terms of when you're applying, the application process could be slightly different depending what you're applying to. So my advice is to basically read what it says on the advert. Where we have graduate roles, they're going to be advertised on the site. So read what it says, do what it does, do what it asks. It's quite simple. It's quite likely that you're going to be asked to submit a CV and a covering letter. If you need to do that, it doesn't need to be all flash and polished. As you can see, we're a very down-to-earth company. what we want to get to know is the real you. So it doesn't need to be all whiz bang. What we do like to see is conciseness. So we want you to be very clear and open and honest and concise. That's what we like. Pre-screening questions, that is part of the process for the European Commercial Graduate Programme. So if you get past our initial screening, then we will send you some questions. For what we're looking for in responses there, again, is the fact that you understand what you're applying to as best you can, that you do some research on Ineos. Again, we want you to answer the question quite, Ineos related, as broad as you can. We don't want some sort of generic answers that you've just got from your recent lecture on sustainability or whatever it was. We want it to be, that you know what Ineos is up to, not in great depth, but we want you to have done some research. Spelling mistakes, we don't like spelling mistakes. We don't like it messy, so simple but not messy. Don't not answer a question, because again, that just looks sloppy. So rigor, as Tom mentioned, right up front is one of our core values. So get it right, but it doesn't need to be flash. Mention in your covering letter that you've attended this webinar, because that shows an interest, so we can keep an eye out for you. So feel free to mention that. Again, just talking about the commercial programme, because I'm very close to that one. That will start off with a telephone interview. So right up front, we get sort of close and personal. Again, it's been mentioned before. We're looking very much for a type of person that we think is going to fit the Ineos environment. Because if you're happy here, then we're going to be happy typically. The culture doesn't suit everybody, but I think hopefully you're getting a very good feel for what Ineos is about. We like to be very open and transparent about that. So we don't go in for psychometric testing up front. We don't use those tools. We don't do virtual interviews with third parties either. We want to get to know you up front. So telephone interview straight away. Then you'd be invited to an assessment centre if you were successful at the telephone interview. This year, unfortunately, because of COVID, we are going to have to run these virtually as we did last year. They did work very well, but it's not our favoured method, but we just have to be practical, in these current times. So that at the assessment centre, there would be a more in-depth HR interview. There would be some technical commercial interviews. We'd ask you to do a presentation before on a specific topic and come to us and talk us through that. And then we'd have a group exercise to see how you are behaving in a team. This is very much a team environment, as I think you've heard already. If you're successful there, then our final interview stage is with board members. So again, I think you've heard about the exposure to the board early on, and that's why the boards know, because they're generally part of final stages of interviews. We aim to complete all of this before Christmas if we possibly can. This year we may extend it into Q1, not quite sure yet. We again can be flexible and nimble on our feet, so we'll sort of see how it goes. What we will definitely do, even if those parts are virtual, we will definitely make sure we get to meet you in person before we made any offers. I think that's good for both sides. I personally wouldn't want to be accepting a job if I hadn't met somebody or some people from the company, seen a site or seen a location. So we can commit to, as long as it is practical, that we will actually meet you face to face at a location. You will get the opportunity to meet some people face to face before we made any offers. That's our plan. Okay, and I think now I'm going to hand over to Tiga, who's been sitting there patiently. Thank you, Tiga, who's going to talk to you about his experience of when he applied to us a couple of years ago. So thanks, Tiga.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, Annie. So who am I? My name is Tegri Gigo. I am based in Frankfurt currently, was previously based in Cologne. And I studied chemical engineering at the University of Manchester applied for the scheme in 2017 and started in 2018. Now, important to note is that when I did my chemical engineering studies, I did not have a year in industry, which when I was in all of your position, I was actually quite concerned about, because I thought perhaps the lack of experience will be a red mark against me, but it absolutely wasn't. If we just move to the next slide. What is the application process like? So what's it really like? Annie's given you like the sort of helicopter view of what it is, but I can pretty much confirm everything that she said. So there are no psychometric tests. There are no psychometric games, which is something new that they started doing. There are no pre-recorded video interviews. Essentially at Ineos, and you've heard it over the course of this presentation, we're very interested in people and potential. We don't use these tools that essentially reduce you down to a number of data points. We're more interested in meaningful interaction, and that's what you'll get from the beginning when you have the telephone interview. Actually, my telephone interview, the first one was conducted by Annie, and I remember towards the end of it, after all of the interview questions were asked, we just sort of had a chat about what my final project was about, what I was doing, and Annie's a chemist, so she could relate to a certain degree. Of course, I'm a chemical engineer, and those are not the same thing. But she could relate to a certain degree, and we just had a bit of a chinwag almost. It was extremely refreshing, and it's something that I hadn't experienced when I've applied for various other programs and schemes, and it's just really refreshing and humanizing somehow. And I think what's really important to say about the application process is that you feel safe to be yourself. I've been to quite a few careers fairs and various other places, and you get the feeling that you're always being observed, like you're some sort of prey animal, and they're trying to see like every sort of move that you make, how your facial expressions, your body language. At Ineos, there are no airs, nothing's sort of like really, basically it's not fake. At the end of the day, it's not fake. There are no airs. What you see is what you get. If they ask you a question, they're not trying to catch you out. They simply want the answer to the question. They want to know how your thought process works. They want to know basically who you are, what makes you tick, and how you feel about certain things. And unfortunately, as Annie's mentioned, it's looking like there'll probably be video assessment centers and video interviews. But I can say from my experience, I was in Manchester. Went up to Grangemouth in Scotland for my first interview. I was a little bit late, but fortunately, because once again, Ineos is about people, I could email directly to HR. I didn't have to go through any sort of portal, let them know what the situation was. There was no issue. Went through the interviews and the various group exercises, and it was fine. It was absolutely fine. You felt completely relaxed. You spoke to the other graduates, and the environment was one where you felt like they wanted you to do your best rather than, trying to trip you up or see who was the best on the day. So if we move forwards to the next slide, and so let's say you're successful. Actually, one point on the previous thing. So as Annie was mentioning, she said they tried to have the offers out by Christmas time. So I can say that I applied roughly September time. It's a while ago now, so you'll have to forgive the vagueness, but I applied roughly September time, and I had my offer around the 15th of December. So I think that's about 3 months in total, which is pretty great, I think, because there are some places I applied to and I still don't know if I got the job. So, so I'd say Ineos is doing a great job there. So what do you see in front of you on this slide here? Well, after if you're successful, you're not just sort of sent out to wherever and expected to excel and succeed on your own. As you probably have noticed, now we've got a very hardworking HR department, and their main interest is to make sure that you do well in whatever position that you've been placed in. So there are various opportunities for you. We've mentioned that there'll be mentors. There's language learning skills. There's whatever training that you feel is required in order for you to be the best you that you can be, and in order for you to best contribute for your role, that's fully available for you. And I personally can say that I've made a lot of use of the language lessons. My girlfriend is German, and her parents do not speak English, so so I've had to very quickly familiarize myself with German, and the support of the company has been invaluable in that regard. I can also say, of course, people have mentioned the fund, so I won't harp on about it too much before you think it's a talking point that's been distributed to all of us. I can say that in terms of the experience, which is ultimately what you're all here for, it's flawless. So you'll have multidisciplinary teams. You'll have international teams with people from various different places. You'll be in multiple locations. You'll be doing multiple different things. And essentially, what more could you want from a graduate program? So yes, it's long. Yes, it's 5 years, but you'll be in different positions, in different places, meeting lots of different people and building yourself into an extremely well-rounded individual. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiga. So
no problem.
Thank you to all our graduates, and I hope that that has given you a good flavour of what it's like to work for Ineos as a graduate, whether you're, you know, on the engineering side, the commercial side. We recruit into a whole variety of disciplines as well. So my advice is to look on the website. So if you go to the careers section, and click on graduates, you'll see the graduate jobs that are available. They will come on sort of throughout the year. So we've got some of our programs up and running already. Some aren't quite up there yet, but I expect them to be up soon. So keep an eye there. That's where you will find them to apply to. And I think I'm just keeping a notice of the time here, and I think we've answered the vast majority of your questions. We have FAQs on the website. There's lots of information on the website, and we've done a whole variety of videos recently, and we filmed at our recent corporate events. They're not up yet, but they should all be loaded up to the YouTube channel shortly. So just to say thanks again to our panelists, thanks to our graduates, and thank you all for listening, and hopefully you found it informative. And any more information, go to our website, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.